Adam Schiff just did something we rarely see in the Senate anymore. He stood up not just for himself, but for the principle of congressional oversight itself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the advantages of being the junior most member of the committee on our side of the aisle is you get to listen to everything that's gone on before you during the course of a hearing. And I want to add my voice to my colleagues who have raised the concern about what happened yesterday. I listened to my ranking member ask a legitimate oversight question about the legal basis for troops to be rappelling from a Black Hawk helicopter for a military-style assault on an apartment building in a major city, the zip tying of children. What was the legal basis for this? I heard my ranking member ask that very simple question, that completely appropriate question. If that's not an appropriate oversight question, I don't know what an appropriate oversight question is. And the response was not just to refuse to answer the question, but it was to attack the character of the ranking member and to insult him. And then when it was Senator Whitehouse's turn to ask a question, he asked a very legitimate oversight question about a FBI undercover operation in which reportedly $50,000 was paid to the White House border czar prior to him becoming the White House border czar, but with the expectation that he would be helpful in arranging contracts when he became the White House border czar. What happened to the money? A perfectly legitimate oversight question. And rather than answer that question in a closed investigation, not an open investigation, but a closed investigation, she simply attacked Senator Whitehouse personally. And I heard another one of my colleagues ask what was the legal basis for blowing up ships in the Caribbean. Reportedly, the Justice Department wrote an opinion justifying blowing up ships in the Caribbean. A perfectly legitimate oversight question, and the response was another personal attack. These, what were apparently canned, written personal attacks in advance. I wouldn't bother with the attacks on me. I've grown all too accustomed to them for the last 8 years. But if members of this committee can't ask those serious questions and get serious answers, we can't do oversight. I'm new to this committee. I spent about a decade on the House Judiciary Committee. I never saw a hearing like this with a cabinet officer, and if I did and some Democratic cabinet officer were to personally attack each of my Republican colleagues, I would call for a stop to it. It would be disgraceful. And I understand the reluctance to criticize on your side of the aisle one of the Republican cabinet members. But if this becomes the template for future hearings, we won't be able to do any oversight, and things will just degenerate. These questions deserve answers. I would expect that if troops were rappelling from helicopters in any city, in any of your states, and hog-tying children, you would want to know the legal basis. And so would I. We are going to submit for the record in written form the questions that the Attorney General refused to answer. I would hope, Mr. Chairman, you would join us in submitting those questions. They will have a much better chance of being answered if you join us in submitting those questions. But I would hope also in the future that if a witness, rather than respond, simply attacks our members, that it be stopped. That the witness be instructed to either answer the question or to state why they're refusing to answer the question, but to refrain from personal attacks on the members of this committee. That would be my request. And Mr. Chairman, I'm really grateful to be on this committee. And I appreciate every interaction I've had with you. You have, in our personal interactions, always been eminently fair. If I didn't think that you were of that character, I wouldn't even raise this because there wouldn't be a point. But I would ask that we not have another hearing like that one, and that you join in our legitimate oversight request. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I thought that I set the decorum for a hearing, oversight hearing, when I said before we asked the director of the FBI any questions or any statements, that we should, both sides, treat each other with respect. And I even said to Patel, if you don't get a chance to answer your questions, I'll give you an opportunity after the senator's finished for a few minutes to respond whatever you didn't get a chance to say. And you know how that meeting turned out. And particularly from your side of the aisle, a lot of strong statements about the FBI director. Whether they were legitimate or not is beside the point. It didn't follow the decorum, and obviously the director of the FBI didn't follow the decorum. So I don't know what more I can do than plead with my people who are fellow senators to follow a certain decorum, and I assume it would be followed on the other side. I don't appreciate the insults that went to Democrat members, particularly where they were wrong. But after seeing how senators handled the FBI director, I guess I felt that just let the show go on the way the senators wanted to go on. And that's what developed as a result of it. That may be a weak excuse for what happened that day, but I thought things didn't work out the way I expected them to when the FBI director was here, and some of the people on your side of the aisle were some of the ones that were screaming and yelling and talking over the FBI director. Meeting adjourned.
What you just watched wasn't just a procedural complaint or a senator venting about bad behavior. It was a warning that the very foundation of checks and balances, the ability of Congress to question executive power, is being eroded right before our eyes. Schiff laid it out plainly. During Pam Bondi's confirmation hearing, Democrats asked legitimate, oversight-focused questions. Questions about the legality of military-style raids, about the misuse of taxpayer funds, about secretive Justice Department actions. These weren't partisan attacks. They were the core of what oversight is supposed to be. And instead of answers, what they got were personal insults. Prepared, rehearsed, written attacks directed not at the substance of the questions, but at the senators themselves. That's the part that should trouble everyone, regardless of party. Because once a cabinet official feels entitled to attack members of Congress instead of answering for their actions, that's no longer oversight. That's impunity. Schiff's point cuts deeper than politics. He reminded us that when officials hide behind personal attacks, when they treat questions like threats instead of responsibilities, they're showing contempt not just for Democrats, but for democracy itself. Oversight exists precisely because power without accountability is dangerous. And then came Grassley's response. He tried to defend the breakdown of decorum by pointing to a past hearing, essentially saying, well, Democrats got loud before, so what did you expect? That's not leadership. That's abdication. When the chair of a Senate committee shrugs off a cabinet nominee attacking senators as if it's just another bad day at the office, it normalizes behavior that would have once been unthinkable. This is bigger than Pam Bondi's temperament. It's about the Trump administration's ongoing campaign to delegitimize every institution that questions it. From the courts, to the press, to Congress, the message has been consistent. If you demand accountability, you're the enemy. And what we saw in that hearing was that mentality spilling into the Senate chamber, the most deliberate, procedural, and traditionally respectful space in American government. Schiff wasn't just defending his colleagues. He was defending the idea that truth still matters, that hearings should be about facts, not theater. He called out how Bondi deflected every question with personal jabs, how she attacked credibility instead of addressing legality, and how that approach is poisoning the culture of governance. And when Grassley implied there was nothing more he could do, it revealed something even sadder, a resignation to the idea that this level of dysfunction is now normal. But it shouldn't be. A hearing where senators are insulted instead of informed, where questions about military raids, spending, and legality are dismissed as personal attacks, is not normal. It's a symptom of a government that's losing its moral and institutional compass. So what Schiff did here wasn't just push back. It was a line in the sand. He made clear that if oversight dies, democracy doesn't fade away overnight. It collapses slowly through moments exactly like this. Pam Bondi may have thought she was scoring political points with her defiance, but what she really did was remind everyone how fragile accountability has become. And Grassley's reluctance to act underscored that this isn't just about one nominee. It's about an entire system of power learning to ignore consequences. This is the new political reality we have to confront, that basic decency and professional accountability are now partisan fights. Schiff was right. This can't become the template for future hearings. If senators can't demand answers without being attacked, then who's really running the government? And that's why it matters that people see this, understand it, and stay engaged. Because these hearings, these clashes over truth, decorum, and responsibility are not just background noise. They're the front lines of whether democracy still works. If you're tired of watching public service replaced with political theater, if you still believe Congress should be a place for answers, not insults, make sure you subscribe to The Liberal Lens. We're going to keep breaking down these hearings, exposing the hypocrisy, and reminding people what accountability is supposed to look like. And if you want to support this work directly, join us on Patreon. Every contribution helps us keep producing fact-based, fearless coverage that cuts through the noise. Because democracy doesn't defend itself, people do.